Welcome back. Let's reading some more about old fighter jets. So it's not a talking video, just like to relax and reading about this. It's 2 p.m. So I start to, but I did read the last one, the P-59. Did read it, then I made a kind of video in my language Danish. I will do the same. I was supposed to do some video in English too, but I'm too tired to do that. I will do something later. I will look all these old fighter jets later and make one long big video, but not today.
Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star. P-80 redirects here. For other uses, see P-80, disambiguation. The Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star is the first jet fighter used operationally by the United States Army Air Forces, USAF, during World War II. Designed and built by Lockheed in 1943 and delivered just 143 days from the start of design, two pre-production models saw limited service in Italy just before the end of World War II. Designed with straight wings, the type saw extensive combat in Korea with the United States Air Force, USAF, as the F-80. America's first successful turbojet-powered combat aircraft, it was soon outclassed with the appearance of the swept-wing transonic MiG-15 and was quickly replaced in the air superiority role by the transonic F-86 Sabre. The F-94 Starfire, an all-weather interceptor using the same airframe, also saw Korean War service. The closely related T-33 Shooting Star trainer remained in service with the U.S. Air Force and Navy well into the 1980s. With the last NT-33 variant not retired until April 1997. Design and development, edit. The XP-80 had a conventional all-metal airframe, with a slim low wing and tricycle landing gear. Like most early jets designed during World War II, and before the Allies captured German research data that confirmed the speed advantages of swept wings, the XP-80 had straight wings, similar to previous propeller-driven fighters. It was the first operational jet fighter to have its engine buried in the fuselage, a format previously used in the pioneering German Heinkel He-178 V1 of 1939, and the later British Gloucester E.28/39 demonstrator of 1941. Other early jets generally had two engines because of their limited power, these being mounted in external nacelles for easier maintenance. With the advent of more powerful British jet engines, a single fuselage-mounted engine was more effective, and this configuration was used by nearly all subsequent fighter aircraft. Lockheed was the first American aircraft company to start work on a jet-powered aircraft, beginning work on the L-133 in 1939. The L-133 eventually developed into an extremely advanced design, including futuristic features such as canard forewings and a blended wing body. But when Lockheed presented the design to the Army Air Force, it was rejected as being technologically unfeasible. Instead, the USAF concentrated development around the much less radical Bell P-59 Airacome, which first flew in October 1942. It quickly became obvious, however, that the P-59's performance was only marginally superior to current piston-engined fighters. Bell performed preliminary work revising the P-59 with a low wing and a single fuselage-mounted engine, to be designated XP-59B, but by this time the Bell factory was swamped with other work, so the USAF transferred the project to Lockheed. The impetus for development of the P-80 was the discovery by Allied intelligence of the Mi-262 in spring 1943, which had made only test flights of its own first quartet, the V-1 through V-4 airframes, of design prototypes at that time, all fitted with retracting tail wheel landing gear. After receiving documents and blueprints comprising years of British jet aircraft research, the commanding general of the Army Air Force, Henry H. Arnold, believed an airframe developed to accept the British-made Halford H-1B Goblin jet engine could provide the superior performance to match the new German jets, and the Material Command's Wright Field Research and Development Division tasked Lockheed to design the aircraft based on their experience with the L-133. Concept work began on the XP-80 in May 1943. Since the British turbojet was not yet delivered, Lockheed obtained its blueprint dimensions from Bell as ordered by the USAF. Lockheed's team, consisting of 28 engineers, was led by Clarence L. Kelly Johnson in the same manner as the P-38 Lightning, in the same remote building with high security and greater autonomy, a continuation of Lockheed's Skunk Works style of research and development. With the Germans and British clearly far ahead in development, Lockheed was pressed to develop a comparable jet as quickly as possible. Kelly Johnson submitted a design proposal in mid-June and promised that the prototype would be ready for testing in 150 days. The Skunk Works team, beginning the 26th of June, 1943, produced the airframe in 143 days, delivering it to Muroc Army Airfield on the 16th of November. The project was so secret that only 5 of the more than 130 people working on it knew that they were developing a jet aircraft, and the British engineer who delivered the Halford H-1 engine was detained by the police because Lockheed officials could not vouch for him. After the engine had been mated to the airframe, foreign object damage during the first run-up destroyed the engine. The British engineer who had delivered the engine had warned Lockheed that the skin of the inlet ducts was too thin, but the American engineers ignored this warning and both ducts collapsed and were sucked into the engine when at full throttle. This delayed the first flight until a second engine, the only other existing, could be delivered from Britain, de Havilland generously donating the engine intended for the prototype Vampire. The first prototype, 44 to 83,020, was nicknamed Lulu Bell, also known as the Green Hornet because of its paint scheme. Powered by the replacement Halford H-1 taken from the prototype de Havilland Vampire jet fighter, it first flew on the 8th of January, 1944, with Lockheed test pilot Milo Burcham at the controls. Following this flight, Johnson said, "It was a magnificent demonstration. Our plane was a success, such a complete success that it had overcome the temporary advantage the Germans had gained from years of preliminary development on jet planes." The donated British jet engine and program data had no doubt proved invaluable. In test flights, the XP-80 eventually reached a top speed of 502 miles per hour, 808 kilometers per hour, 436 km, at 20,480 feet, 6,240 m, making it the first turbojet-powered USAF aircraft to exceed 500 miles per hour in level flight, following the August 1944 record flight of 504 miles per hour, 811 kilometers per hour, 438 km, by a special high-speed variant of the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. Contemporary pilots, when transitioning to pioneering jets like the Shooting Star, were unused to flying at high speed without a loud reciprocating engine and had to learn to rely on the airspeed indicator. The second prototype, designated XP-80, was designed for the larger General Electric I-40 engine, an improved J-31, later produced by Allison as the J-33. Two aircraft, 44 to 83,021 and 44 to 83,022, were built. 44 to 83,021 was nicknamed the Grey Ghost after its pearl grey paint scheme, while 83,022, left unpainted for comparison of flight characteristics, became known as the Silver Ghost. The P-80's first test flight was unimpressive, but most of the problems with the design were soon addressed and corrected in the test program. Initial opinions of the P-80 were not positive, with Lockheed Chief Engineering Test Pilot Milo Burcham commenting that an aircraft he very much enjoyed, powered by the Halford engine, had now become a dog. The P-80s were primarily testbeds for larger, more powerful engines and air intake design, and consequently were larger and 25% heavier than the P-80. The P-80 testing program proved very dangerous. Burcham was killed on the 20th of October, 1944 while flying the third P-80, 44-83025. The Grey Ghost was lost on a test flight on the 20th of March, 1945, although pilot Tony Levi escaped. Newly promoted to Chief Engineering Test Pilot to replace Burcham, Levi bailed out when one of the engine's turbine blades broke, causing structural failure in the aircraft's tail. Levi landed hard and broke his back, but returned to the test program after 6 months of recovery. The top-scoring World War II USAF ace Major Richard Bourne was also killed on an acceptance flight of a production P-80 in the United States on the 6th of August, 1945. Both Burcham and Bourne crashed as a result of main fuel pump failure. Burcham's death was the result of a failure to brief him on a newly installed emergency fuel pump backup system, but the investigation of Bourne's crash found that he had apparently forgotten to switch on this pump, which could have prevented the accident. He bailed out when the aircraft rolled inverted but was too close to the ground for his parachute to deploy. After Bourne's death, both the USAF and Lockheed wanted to prove the reliability of the airplane. Robert E. Thacker from the Flight Test Division at Wright Field was ordered to select 3 other pilots, pick up 5 P-80s from Lockheed and fly them to Muroc Army Air Base, and fly each airplane there for 500 hours. Thacker tapped Chuck Yeager, plus 2 other pilots, and they put 500 hours on each airplane without further incident. After the war, the USAF compared the P-80 and Me-262, concluding, despite a difference in gross weight of nearly 2,000 pounds, 900 kilograms, the Me-262 was superior to the P-80 in acceleration, speed and approximately the same in climb performance. The Me-262 apparently has a higher critical Mach number, the Me-262s being at M0.86, from a drag standpoint, than any current Army Air Force fighter. Operational history, edit. The Shooting Star began to enter service in late 1944 with 12 pre-production YP-80s, one of which was destroyed in the accident in which Burcham was killed. A 13th YP-80 was modified to the Sol F-14 photo reconnaissance model and lost in a December crash. 4 were sent to Europe for operational testing, demonstration, familiarization, and possible interception roles, 2 to England and 2 to the 1st Fighter Group at Lesina Airfield, Italy. But when test pilot Major Frederick Borsodi was killed in a crash caused by an engine fire while demonstrating a YP-80, 44 to 83,026, at RAF Burtonwood, Lancashire, England, on the 28th of January, 1945, the YP-80 was temporarily grounded. Before World War II ended, however, 2 American pre-production Lockheed YP-80 Shooting Star fighter jets saw limited service in Italy with the USAF on reconnaissance, in February and March 1945. Because of delays in delivery of production aircraft, the Shooting Star saw no actual combat during the conflict. The initial production order was for 344 P-80s after USAF acceptance in February 1945. A total of 83 P-80s had been delivered by the end of July 1945 and 45 assigned to the 412th Fighter Group, later redesignated the 1st Fighter Group, at Muroc Army Airfield. Production continued after the war, although wartime plans for 5,000 were quickly reduced to 2,000 at a little under $100,000 each. A total of 1,714 single-seat F-80O, F-80B, F-80C, and RF-80S were manufactured by the end of production in 1950, of which 927 were F-80Cs, including 129 operational F-80s upgraded to F-80C-11 low standards. However, the two-seat F-80C, first flown on the 22nd of March 1948, became the basis for the T-33 trainer, of which 6,557 were produced. On the 27th of January 1946, Colonel William H. Council flew a P-80 non-stop across the U.S. to make the first transcontinental jet flight. He completed the 2,457 miles, 3,954 kilometers, run between Long Beach and New York in 4:13 and 26 seconds hours at an average speed of 584 miles per hour, 507 km, 940 kilometers per hour, aided by the upper-level westerly winds, to set a Federation Aeronautic International record. The P-80B prototype, modified as a racer and designated P-80R, was piloted by Colonel Albert Boyd to a world airspeed record of 623.73 miles per hour, 1004.2 kilometers per hour, on the 19th of June, 1947. The P-80C began production in 1948. On the 11th of June, the newly formed United States Air Force redesignated the type as F-80C. The USAF Strategic Air Command had F-80 Shooting Stars in service from 1946 through 1948 with the 1st and 56th Fighter Groups. The first P-80s to serve in Europe joined the 55th Fighter Group, later redesignated the 31st FG, at Giebelstadt, Germany, in 1946, remaining 18 months. When the Soviet Union blockaded Berlin, a squadron of the 56th FG led by Colonel David C. Schilling made the first west to east Atlantic crossing by single-engined jets in July, flying to Germany for 45 days in Operation Fox Able I, replaced by the newly Shooting Star-equipped 36th Fighter Group at Fürstenfeldbruck. The 56th FG conducted Fox Able II in May 1949. That same year, F-80s first equipped the 51st Fighter Group, based in Japan. The 4th, Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, 81st, Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico, and 57th, Elmendorf Air Force Base, Alaska, fighter groups all acquired F-80s in 1948, as did interceptor squadrons of the Air Defense Command. The first Air National Guard unit to fly the F-80C was the 196th FS of the California ANG in June 1947. U.S. Navy Service, edit. Several P-80 Shooting Stars were transferred to the United States Navy beginning the 29th of June 1945, retaining their P-80 designations. At Naval Air Station Patuxent River, one Navy P-80 was modified with required add-ons, such as an arrestor hook, and loaded aboard the aircraft carrier USS Franklin D. Roosevelt at Norfolk, Virginia, on the 31st of October, 1946. The following day the aircraft made 4 deck run takeoffs and 2 catapult launches. with 5 arrested landings, flown by Marine Major Marion Carl. A second series of trials was held on the 11th of November. The U.S. Navy had already begun procuring its own jet aircraft, but the slow pace of delivery was causing retention problems among pilots, particularly those of the Marines who were still flying bout F-4U Corsairs. To increase land-based jet transition training in the late 1940s, 50 F-80Cs were transferred to the U.S. Navy from the U.S. Air Force in 1949 as jet trainers. Designated to 1 by the Navy, changed to TV-1 in 1950, 25 were based at Naval Air Station North Island, California, with VF-52, and 16 assigned to the Marine Corps, equipping VMF-311 at Marine Corps Air Station El Toro. These aircraft were eventually sent to reserve units. The success of these aircraft led to the procurement by the Navy of 698 T-33 Shooting Stars, as the TU-2 forward/TV-2, to provide a 2-seat aircraft for the training role. Lockheed went on to develop a carrier-capable version, the T-2VC Star, which went into service in 1957. Korean War, edit. Shooting Stars first saw combat service in the Korean War, and were among the first aircraft to be involved in jet versus jet combat. The Americans used the F-80C variant and F-80 Photo Recon variants in Korea. The F-80 flew both air-to-air and air-to-ground sorties, claiming several aerial victories against North Korean Yak-9S and Il-10S. On the 1st of November 1950, a Russian MiG-15 pilot, Lieutenant Semyon F. Klomenik, became the first pilot in history to be credited with a jet versus jet aerial kill after he claimed to have shot down an F-80. According to the Americans, the F-80 was downed by flak. 1 week later, on the 8th of November, the first American claim for a jet versus jet aerial kill was made when Lieutenant Russell J. Brown, flying an F-80, reported that he downed a MiG-15. Soviet records claim that no MiGs were lost that day and that their pilot, Senior Lieutenant Kharitonov, survived by pulling out of a dive at low altitude. Despite initial claims of success, the speed of the straight-wing F-80S was inferior to the 668 miles per hour, 1,075 kilometers per hour, MiGs. The MiGs incorporated German research showing that swept wings delayed the onset of compressibility problems, and enabled speeds closer to the speed of sound. F-80S were soon replaced in the air superiority role by the North American F-86 Sabre, which had been delayed to also incorporate swept wings into an improved straight-winged naval FJ-1 Fury. However, F-80 pilots still destroyed a total of 6 MiG-15s in aerial combat. When sufficient Sabres were in operation, the Shooting Star flew exclusively ground attack missions, and were also used for advanced flight training duties and air defense in Japan. By the end of hostilities, the only F-80s still flying in Korea were photo reconnaissance variants. F-80Cs equipped 10 USAF squadrons in Korea. 8th Fighter Bomber Wing, 35th, 36th, and 80th Fighter Bomber Squadrons, based at Suwon Air Base, was the longest-serving F-80 unit in Korea. It began missions from Japan in June 1950 and continued to fly the Shooting Star until May 1953, when it converted to F-86 Sabres. 49th Fighter Bomber Group, 7th, 8th, and 9th FBS, deployed to Taegu-AB, K2, Korea, from Japan in September 1950 and continued fighter bomber missions in the F-80C until June 1951, when it converted to the F-84 Thunderjet. 51st Fighter Interceptor Wing, 16th and 25th FIS, operated F-80Cs from Kimpo AB, K-14, and Japan from September 1950 to November 1951 when it transitioned to F-86S. 35th Fighter Interceptor Group and 2 squadrons, the 39th and 40th FIS, went to Pohang, Korea in July 1950, but converted to the P-51 Mustang before the end of the year. One RF-80 unit operated in the Korean War. 8th Tactical Reconnaissance Squadron, later redesignated 15th TRS, served from the 27th of June 1950 at Itajuk, Japan, Taegyu, K2, and Kimpo, K14, South Korea, until after the armistice. The squadron also utilized a few converted RF-80CS and RF-86S. During the Korean War, 368 F-80S were lost, including 277 in combat missions and 91 non-combat losses. Of the 277 F-80S lost in operations, approximately 30% of the existing inventory, 113 were lost to ground fire, 14 to enemy aircraft, 54 to unknown causes, and 96 were other losses. F-80S are credited by the USAF with destroying 17 aircraft in air-to-air combat and 24 on the ground. Major Charles J. Loring Jr. was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions while flying an F-80 with the 80th Fighter Bomber Squadron, 8th Fighter Bomber Wing on the 22nd of November, 1952. Variants, edit. P-80/F-80, edit. 1,714 production aircraft were delivered to the Air Force prior to any conversions or redesignations, with their original block numbers. XP-80. Prototype powered by a de Havilland-built Halford H.1B turbojet and first flown the 8th of January, 1944, one built. XP-80. Production prototype variant powered by a General Electric I-40 turbojet, increased span and length but wing area reduced, 2 built. YP-80. 12 pre-production aircraft. 1 aircraft, 44 to 83,027, lent to Rolls-Royce Limited and used for development of the Nene engine. XF-14. 1 built from YP-80 order, 44 to 83,024, lost in mid-air collision with B-25 Mitchell Chase plane on the 6th of December, 1944, USAF photo reconnaissance prototype. P-80. 344 Block 1 low aircraft, 180 Block 5 low aircraft. Block 5 and all subsequent shooting stars were natural metal finish. Fitted with 225 US gal, 187 imp gal, 850 L, tip tanks. F-80. USAF designation of P-80. F-80. Modified to test prone pilot cockpit positions. F-14. Unknown number of photo reconnaissance conversions from P-80, all redesignated FP-80. XFP-80. Modified P-80 4485-201 with hinged nose for camera equipment. FP-80. 152 Block 15 low, operational photo reconnaissance aircraft. RF-80. USAF designation of FP-80, 66 operational F-80S modified to RF-80 standard. ERF-80. Modified P-80 4485-042 with experimental nose contour. XP-80B. Reconfigured P-80, improved J-33 engine, 1 built as prototype for P-80B. P-80B. 209 Block 1 low, 31 Block 5 low, first model fitted with an ejection seat, retrofitted into as. Delivered between March 1947 and March 1948. The P-80B also featured underwing rocket launchers. Thinner wings with thicker skin, a stronger nose bulkhead to support 6XM 3.50 in machine guns, stainless steel armored compartment for the newer J33-21, cockpit cooling, and canopy anti-frosting systems. 240 produced. F-80B. USAF designation of P-80B. P-80R. Modification of P-80B to Racer. P-80C. 162 Block 1 low, 75 Block 5 low, 561 Block 10 low.